Hey guys, it's Deja aka So Anxious, and today I'm going to be talking you guys through the different levels of rendering quality. If you guys don't know by now, rendering is making a 3D model look more realistic through texture, color, light, dimension, and massing. So when you render on Revit, throughout the whole process, through all the line work and representation, that is going to look either like line work or just a drawing, and sometimes you can add color to it. But what happens when you render is everything that you implemented as far as selecting the fabrics, selecting the interior, exterior lighting, all of that actually comes to life once you hit the render button on the Revit program. And this is similar to other programs as well. We're just going to be focusing on Revit today. So there are mainly 4 different types of rendering qualities that you can access on the Revit program. Actually, there's 5. And so the first one is draft. And I've noticed with draft, a lot of the reflectivity is very prevalent. It seems to be a lot of base with lines. And so if you know the connection, or if you know the difference between Photoshop and InDesign, Photoshop is usually images made of lines, whereas InDesign use more pixels, and so it's usually just better quality overall in InDesign. So yeah, when you do draft or medium quality on Revit, draft or medium rendering on, so when you use draft or medium rendering on Revit, to me, I think it focuses on presenting the lines, the shape in general, the curves, and showing the reflectivity as much as possible. So you'll notice like rings around the light. With the example I'll show, you'll notice that everything kind of looks really shiny, and it's not as realistic. It isn't really how we experience life visually, and it's very, very, very sharp. Everything is very sharp. So then when you move on to high and best quality, like the comparison of Photoshop and InDesign, I feel that it is more pixelated, and so it gets a little bit more of the softness of the rendering, and the reflectivity is just a little bit more smooth and gentle, a little bit more blurred. But the hugest difference in these qualities is that the time it takes is substantial compared to, the draft or medium. Between rendering and draft and medium, it was about 4 minutes to, I think, 9 minutes with the example I'm going to show you guys. And even 4 minutes for draft is pretty long. Sometimes if you just click render on draft, it'll like pop up in a few seconds. But high quality and best always takes pretty daggone long. And this could have to do with my storage on my computer, the fact that my computer was not fully charged during this process, the fact that there was a lot going on in the scene. There can be a lot of factors making your rendering process take a little bit longer, but for the high quality, I think that took about 34 minutes, and the best quality took, if I can remember, an hour, a little under an hour, like 56 minutes or something like that. And so yeah, the difference in time it took is crazy, between 4 minutes and 56 minutes. So that is your options that you have inside of the program, just a few clicks away. But you also can render in cloud. So rendering in cloud just transfers your image onto an online database, I suppose is the right wording for that, and it renders it in the cloud. So rendering in the cloud can be your best bet. Sometimes it takes 10 minutes always for me. I don't know if it takes shorter period of time for anyone else depending on what they're rendering, but it will consistently always take 10 minutes no matter how intricate or non-intricate the image is. And you will be able to see the difference in all of the levels of render quality. I think the cloud is sometimes the best just because you just have more options. You can do a panoramic, you can kind of do a walkthrough, and it moves you slowly through the room. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But if you just need a still image to render, for the most part I stay inside the software and use draft to best quality. But yeah, so that is my overview on rendering quality in general. And so now we're gonna see how that affects this scene I have right here. And yep, let's get started. So right now this is a project that I was working on for studio, and it is a kind of relaxation room and a balcony space. So I'm going to start off on the draft rendering. As you can see, it's really dark right now, so I changed the I adjusted the light exposure so you guys could just get a better look of the scene. And as you can see, the lights are very, very strong. If you look at the reflective glass, it's really not realistic to how a bulb will reflect from a glass in real life. So that's not too good. And then we look at the chairs over to our left, and they are very digital looking in my opinion, very smooth and very specific on where the light hit the chair. But overall it's an okay rendering. It gives you an idea of how the space would look, but it's just not the best. So now we're going to move to medium. And as you can see, there's a drastic change in the light atmosphere, or I guess the light span. It's not a harsh circle, at least on the actual wall. It's still that weird harsh circle on the reflective glass. But yeah, it calmed down a little bit, and the lighting is just softer in general. The furniture is still very angular and flat, but overall the quality did improve. So we're gonna go to high. And immediately, I hope you guys notice that immediately as it starts to render, it becomes extremely pixelated like I talked about at the beginning. It's smoother, it is a little bit more blurry, but you know, once we wait until it renders completely, you'll notice that all of that roundness, even with the reflection, has calmed down. You can really see more of the space that is behind the perspective, because a perspective view is like, you know, as if you stood in a space and, you know, took a picture with a camera. But in a reflection, you can kind of see the hallway behind that viewpoint. And essentially, in my opinion, the furniture looks a little bit more rounded, more softer. It looks like it is made of fabric and not of dry erase board. And so that is a really good sign. I think this is a presentable piece to include in a project. And now we're going to move on to the best. And it is also really pixelated, as we can see. And it is definitely softer than even the last rendering on high, but the brightness is so beautiful. This is a really beautiful rendering. The yellows come out just as much as the brown and orange. Just the tones are more cohesive with one another. If you really look and squint your eyes, you can see that on the bulbs, the brightest part, on the reflective screen, the brightest part is the center and not an outside circle around like how we saw on the draft and medium rendering or medium option. So that is extremely lifelike, and you can just see more of the detail of the hallway behind you in the reflective glass. So this is the best option. I'm not gonna let this run all the way because it already took, I think, the 60 or 50 minutes. I'm not sure. I can't really see from here. But it already took a substantial amount of time for it to even get to that small percentage. And we can see a big difference. So just imagine if you had the time to sit and let it render all the way through, how realistic the scene could get. So now we're going to move on to rendering in cloud. You click the render in cloud option and you select all the preferences of the final outcome that you want to have visually. So a spinny wheel should pop up at the top right next to your login name, and you're going to go and look at the rendering online, and something like this should pop up and it will be a rendering in process. And so you want to click on that. And as I said, it for me consistently takes 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, this is what we have. I'm pretty sure you guys can see the difference between draft, medium, high, and best on the programming, and then in cloud, especially as far as the color. To me, cloud gives me a medium between, or it gives me a combination of the medium and high quality. It is pretty sharp, but also pretty what word am I looking for? Whole? Cohesive. It makes sense. There aren't rings around the light, but the lights are also very bright. As you can see there, it's kind of it's a really small difference between the intensity of the light on the walls and the intensity of the reflective lights on that glass wall. And so this is something that you won't have on high and best quality, and that is a little less realistic than real life. But essentially, as far as the color correction, which is really beautiful, oh, that's weird. Yeah, the color correction, that's really beautiful, and the display of the textures on the furniture and the capturing of the lighting in general brings you to a pretty presentable rendering that you can, pull up and show someone so they could get a better feel and experience of the space digitally. So yeah, it is a good option to use. this all just depends on whatever scene you are personally rendering. In this scene I have these very drastic pendant lights, and so that's going to have a big impact on what quality I use, as well as having wooden floors. Like my floors aren't that shiny, but if I did have shiny floors, that would be much more extreme in draft than compared to high quality. You may want it to be more visible than softer and calm down. It depends on what you are trying to display and what you're trying to illustrate, period. So when you work on your next project, please look at all the different rendering qualities from 1 to 5, and draft, medium, high, best, and incloud, just to see which one works for you. Just because, in my opinion, high and best worked for this specific project, that doesn't mean that that would be the same for you, and it may differ in between each of your projects. So please just consider that. And yeah, this is just a video on the difference in rendering quality, and I hope it was really helpful for you. And I hope you know that sometimes you're just going to have to wait for the best results. You know, just chillax, get a snack while you're seeing renders, so that once you transfer that into your project, it has all of the qualities that you want. Alright, thank you for joining me for this video, and I hope to see you next time. Peace out.